all of your, not all of your, I've saved all of your newsletters because, like, you're like Tom. When he sends something out, there's so much depth to it. I could spend a week looking at them and going over. And I'm retired. I got time. So I'm just curious how, I'm really curious. Do you get much response from anybody, or because everybody's in their worlds and really busy, and heck, you're finding time to put it together. How do what's your audience like? Do you have any interaction with people about it?
Yeah, everyone's a little bit different, but goes out to over 7,300 people that have signed themselves up. I don't sign anyone up, or I know it's like some people like buy email lists. So really, really proud of that fact that we've been able to grow it pretty organically, and about 50 to 55% of those folks end up opening it each week. And I probably get 1 to 4 emails from sending out the newsletter. I get a lot of the, especially with the podcast. Like, I feel like I've been talking to you for a long time whenever I like meet someone for the first time. So I feel like the reach is further than the interactions that I get. But yeah, every once in a while, people will reach out and try to engage a little bit further, whether they want to have a conversation or just want to say hey and hello.
Well, my goal in having you on, you're serving the good of the game, and that's what I'm trying to do, and that's what the Sharks are trying to do. And to anyone out there that hasn't subscribed for your newsletter, I don't know what else to say, but you're missing the boat if you don't. Uh, I mean, I've just put on my screen, and I'm going to read out loud to the people here some of the topics, and these, I think there's about 15. I'll read about 5. The titles of your topics: differentiating between a bad, average, and good hockey player. Next topic: how not to be miserable and what actually leads to a happy life. Then, third one: you become what you are surrounded by, and featuring Macklin Celebrini, I believe. And the last one I'll comment on: coaches want more than just problem solvers. But for the listeners out there, within every one of your newsletters, there's a priceless amount of outstanding articles. But what I find interesting, Greg, is the videos. And this morning, I just started this morning and looking at talking about playing in the future. And I said, geez, how am I going to get into this? And Greg, I'm going to see if this works, but I just want you to talk about a little bit about the first one, and then maybe we'll get to the second and what inspired you to do it, and a little bit about some of the details within them. So listeners might be encouraged to reach out and look at this stuff. Go ahead.
Yeah, we're definitely in the summer season, so we'll talk a little more broadly a lot with the newsletter rather than diving into the details. In season, there's a lot more like technical stuff, like what's a good way to process through a 3-on-2. What are some of your reads, things like that. But I was just talking with someone about what a bad, average, and good hockey player looks like, and a bad player is one who just basically doesn't want to touch the puck. Average one who's like, all right, I got the puck, now I'm going to do something. And then a good player, someone who's always engaged and thinking and planning ahead and positioning for the next sequence, play, whatever it is. So that's kind of the premise of that last one, which really, as you saw, if you read it, kind of linked to some other articles that I have in there. Like my first series when I started the newsletter was about adult league, how to suck less, score more goals.
Tom loves that one because he plays 3 times a week.
Yeah, just some basics for all us average hockey players out there. And then the average hockey player, I see a ton in high school. Like, they don't actually start playing until they touch the puck. Now I'm going to do something, rather than skating and being the person that opens up a passing lane or creates the opportunity to pass. They're never really building speed, or they grab a puck, they go until they have no more options, and then they're like, I should look to make a play now. And then that's when they finally are willing to pass the puck. I was playing adult league last night, and there's a guy that literally his teammate turned his knob over while crashing that as F2 because he knew he was never getting that puck, which is quite hilarious. And then the last one for me is like playing in the future. You're always thinking about what is going to come next. How can I best position myself to take advantage of it? Or like your first touch is the one that makes the play. So your first touch is always to a dangerous piece of ice, that kind of stuff. So that's kind of the basics behind it, and there's many rabbit holes you can go down further within that, but just really the mindset between all three of them.
Greg, I wanted to mention when I looked at there was a battle drill in there, and you used the term asset, using your asset, and you put in brackets the word ass, and it had to do with puck protection. The thing that impressed me, and for every listener out there, especially the group that's with us tonight, the clips you put together of using your ass and protecting a puck, having your head up, being aware of what was coming and what's available, it was just brilliant. Those clips in themselves teach. So I'm just twisting the arms of everybody out there. If you haven't looked at some of the clips, just get into the newsletter and take time when you have time to go through it, because that was just brilliant. I just don't know what else to say, but let's just skip through a few topics here, Craig. And I'm going to ask some of the viewers before we leave the differentiating between good, bad, and average. Peter, you're dealing with evaluations in your associations sooner than later, or probably now, and same with Tom. And I'm involved in it. We're having a prep camp this week out here, Craig. Not to select, but it's to just get them in gear and get them ready for the tryouts. So the good, the average, and the weak, the 1, 2, 3 rating scales. Can you add anything to that? And because Craig takes it, we all rate them good, bad, or poor. Now we've got to develop them. It's one thing to pick them, Craig. It's the other thing to develop them. So with the National Women's Program, I use the term we evaluate to develop. So I'm more concerned, like your videos. Well, how do you develop it? Well, your video links, just those visual images, will give the player an idea of what to do. So it's a see and do, as I typed in the email last night. So Peter, what's going on in your evaluation, and where are you at on that? And Tom, go ahead, Peter.
Well, Wally, first, Greg, nice to meet you. Nice to meet you. First off, we actually here in New England, for the most part, Connecticut anyway, they do the tryouts in the spring. So tryouts, evaluations are all done. The theory there is that the players are all on the same level playing field, and because sometimes you'll get the kids that, and I think actually in a very healthy way, have the summer where they do other things, other sports, but then you also get those kids who are just hockey camp oriented all summer, and they come in the fall and they look really good because they've just been on the ice so much, and those other kids sometimes catch up quickly in that. So, and that's just, a matter of opinion. But one thing I think that's very important when we do our evaluations, when we do these with these organizations, because, I personally work with, probably evaluate 8 or 9 different organizations in the state for their tryouts, is the most important part of that tryout section is there's a comment section that I make sure is on every single tryout. So the individuals know why he or she, what they need to work on, what areas of improvement they're at, and the whole purpose is to put them on a team where in their current state of abilities, they can be most successful. all parents want their kids on the A team, and very often that's obviously not the best for every kid. So finding them in a position where they can develop, giving them a tool, a method, a path, what they need to develop on. I think that part is extremely important. So we've done that. That's done, and what the organizations will do too is they'll leave it open-ended, and they'll generally pick their teams a little bit light. So they'll give about a month into the initial fall season, where if there is a player that stands out and should be moved up, they have the room, the space, the wiggle room to move that player up, and put them, again, it's all about putting them in the best spot to be successful within their age group.
Craig, I'm going to come back to all the other newsletters and do a similar thing. But Tom, I've watched you over the years with your staff do player evaluations, and it's at this level we're looking at the best of the best only. And can you talk a little bit about Craig's article, his good, bad, and weak, and how you and your staff discuss them? And each of your staff have sort of different outlooks on picking players.
Yeah, this girls hockey Calgary is kind of unique because it's a provincial league, and the ones that make our team are playing in the top level for under 15 and all this kind of stuff. So what's coming up now is everybody just has a kind of conditioning camp and this kind of thing, so they get on the ice. And then we'll start off with last year there's 8 teams of 20, so 160 girls, and they play 2 games, and then they cut it down to 6 teams, and we send in, we rank the players kind of, and then they go down to 4 teams and play games. And then there's a draft, and we have about 5 extra players, that, like Peter talked about, that, they'll play some games and that, and you make your final decisions. But my staff, everybody ranks, has their own ranking or talk to each other. And then we whittle it down. But then in the draft, there's 3 teams in Calgary. So there's a little bit of luck there if you get your player, right? Everybody kind of knows who the top players are. And, you go down from there, and we probably don't have enough talent to have, they added a team last year to have 3 teams. And so it's really important that the last ones you pick are going to develop and become good enough to play in that league at the very end. But yeah, we talk about the same kind of thing as, who the good ones are. They're pretty obvious. And one of the things we really look for is hockey sense. First of all, can they skate? Because you can't play if you can't skate. Do they work hard? Have they got grit? And hockey sense. Those are the 3 things we're looking for. And, then we make a big ranking of about 40 players and see which ones we get. So that's our process and our way of evaluating.
Well, Craig, I just wanted to let them sort of give you an idea. Well, everybody's doing this out there. And what I'm saying to the coaches that are listening is your newsletter provides resources to improve the areas you're talking about. The puck protection and all that. And I'm just going to give you a little opportunity, Greg, to, generalize about that in terms of your newsletter. The idea of, really you captured my attention. The three levels, 1, 2, 3. Everybody knows that's obvious. And then you got to pick your team. But the essence of what you do is how are you going to get them to be better than they are right now? Can you elaborate on that, the stuff you're doing and how that contributes to development?
Yeah, a lot. I mean, a lot of this stuff is away from the rink, or even away from your coach, right? Um, Background on like starting this was I wanted to have certain conversations with players, and I just couldn't find the type of content and concepts that I wanted to talk on. Obviously, some of my stuff is now so broad. I've got like almost 300 pieces out, so it touched on some stuff that you'll see, but a lot of it dives into the concepts that I wanted to actually talk about with my players. So it was a way of, one, getting the things out in front of my players I want them to see. Two, also being able to be a time leverage, because now a lot of times I will send something I've written to a player, or 2 pieces or 3 pieces, whatever it is, have them read it, come back to me, and then we're having a more in-depth conversation. I'm asking them questions on the piece, trying to get this ingrained in them where it's not so much having to come from me, but has the ability to come from them and their ability to think and problem solve, where they create their own, or maybe they've got an extra added level of detail that I haven't thought about. So from multiple levels, it's been super helpful. And then obviously it's been helpful to just make connections with coaches. And I love even just seeing parents take these pieces, and they're like, I don't know anything about hockey, but I'm trying to give my son and daughter the best resources I can. And they'll actually do like homework together. So like they're learning the game with their kids, or the coaches are handing out homework and they're talking about a piece in off ice with the kids. So it's cool to see that available. Like I've had many people be like, why don't you just put this behind a paywall? You could totally make, a killing at it. And for me, it's more so about how far can we reach people in a positive way, with a little more nuance, a little more detail, rather than a lot of the things, which is like, go to the net, work hard, skate harder, which I found to be utterly useless.
Bang on, Craig. We've talked about this for many years, about coaching changing from yelling to telling and to asking. And asking means your conversation that's happening with parents and players and yourself. Players getting back to you and talking about what they've seen and opening up and discussing it. I just found, looking at the links that I looked at this morning, and every one of your newsletters has brief links, highlight links, that sharing that with a player, a parent, a team, and asking for a response might get a result of engaging them to think about what they're doing. And in fact, as your title is, develop their hockey IQ. So kudos to you. I want to welcome Hal. I don't know if he's on now or ducked out. He's like yourself. He's a working man in the investment area. Hi, Hal. Peter and Hal are from the States like yourself. I'm just going to get them to, Hal, introduce yourself, then Peter, a little bit about yourself to Greg too. Okay? Go ahead, Hal.
Well, Hal's a little bit of a legend with USA Hockey. Me and Hal both do coach education, and we swim in similar circles. I wouldn't say we cross paths all the time, but we definitely have similar circles when it comes to USA Hockey. I'm actually heading up to Minneapolis this weekend for the CDA.
Oh, nice. You're coming this weekend?
Yeah, flying out on Friday.
What's the CDA?
Coach Development Academy. So all the people that are putting on the coach education, we get together. This will be my 3rd year. It's been around 3 years, but so like each year we're kind of helping the newbies get up to date. We're updating the curriculum, any kind of changes we want to make, all that kind of stuff, and getting in the idea of how do we train coaches.
Hockey deal?
It's a USA Hockey deal. The last 2 years.
So they invite you to come from there, but they don't invite me to come from a mile and a half away.
Probably wild, but yeah, we have. I know there's 3 different weekends to choose from. And this is the one, the Mid-Am cruise coming up.
That's good.
We did Detroit the last 2.
That's cool. Yeah, congratulations.
Well, Hal, you're like me. When you get a little older and your hair gets gray, there's a new group coming up, and Greg, you're definitely in the middle of it. But what I've been doing here is, Peter, before we go on, could you talk a bit about yourself and your background, just for
Sure.
Greg's sake?
Sure. One of the things is sometimes your hair doesn't turn gray, sometimes it just falls out. So I'll just point that out. But as far as the USA hockey piece too, you know, I've got a history with that too. I was an instructor for, well, probably 7 to 9 years, I want to say, the New York State District, 1, 2, 3, and 4. I've done that. New England District Festival evaluator for many years. Also coached a team up in Rochester, up at the National Festival back in the day too. Coach prep school for 11 years. ACHA hockey for 7. Just retired as a head coach of Post University, which is a NCAA Division II school. Scouting the USHL. Did some pro scouting for an NHL player agent. So pretty familiar with everything that that you do, and appreciate the effort and the work, because it had, like, to Wally's point, you know, there's a point where it needs to keep rolling, right? Like, it's like a good team, right? When you have a good, there's a difference between a team and a program. If you create a good program, the next guy up, so to speak, the program continues. And I think people like yourself, it's great because that's what you're doing.
Greg, I've got my, I'm looking at the list of newsletters, and the one, you become what you are surrounded by, featuring Macklin Celebrini. I wonder if you could talk about that newsletter, and just let's see where it goes from there.
Yeah, general concept of life is, you know, what you surround yourself with is eventually what you become. And, you know, in many aspects, well, Celebrini's an interesting case because his dad is like the head of performance with the Golden State Warriors. He was with the Vancouver Whitecaps for a long time, Canada Olympic as well. So he's been around some high-end knowledge and athletes and been able to see a lot of things that most people would never have the insight or the window into. So it's kind of an aspect of diving into maybe getting yourself around like-minded people or finding that crew that can help push you. Like, I always find that if there's 1 or 2 players that are having success, it's usually because either they're pushing each other or they found a good coach, and kind of gets down to the idea of iron sharpens iron. Like, you make someone else better by challenging them and they challenge you back. So for example, in that case, Celebrini was around Bedard, Kent Johnson, Andrew Crystal. So quite the crew. I know, like, there's Matthew Wood and a bunch of other guys that were really good. Just being, 1, inspired by each other, but also 2, pushing each other. You know, they're trying things out together. They're on the practice sites, like, watching each other. Like, he would do this, so I would try that, or he would show me how do I better pick up a puck. And they all figured out how to Michigan really easy. I think they've all had at least 1 or 2 high level competition. So iron sharpens iron, being around good things, understanding what excellence looks like. And I find that's something that not every player has, is they think they're good until they see the next level. And one of the reasons why I think, you know, it's of major benefit to play people who are whether above you in age or above you in talent, and then also on the opposite side a little bit below. There's benefits to going both ways and just getting some insight from both of those.
Thanks very much. I'm just not sure where, you know, every coach out there, they're all at different places here, and in terms of levels they work at, level of knowledge. But I just find our group, we're almost too much alike. It's hard to get people in with new ideas because we don't accept them. You know, everybody's sort of standoffish with new ideas. We're not open-minded enough. We think we're lifelong learners, but in fact, we come so rigid in what we've done all along, we don't even dare change. We're not comfortable with it. And I know at my age, I've got a set of ways of doing things for a long time. And I'm discovering uh, they're not outdated, they're still useful. But what's happening with the game today with work like what you're doing and other people, uh, it's really quite amazing. Now, there was another topic in there that I just looked at the title. Um, Coaches want more than just problem solvers. Let's see where that one goes, and then we'll see where everybody else here is on that. Go ahead, Craig.
Yeah, so concept of this one is a little bit of a frustration with everyone being like, oh, he's such a great problem solver. Um, while admirable, I see and understand the aim. I think we can do a lot better than that, especially if we're looking for offensemen. You want offensemen that are creating problems. They're creating questions for the defense to answer, which either direction that they choose, you have the answer to. So you're putting people in awkward spots. We all know when you start having to make selections and you're teeter-totter between two options, the advantage goes to your opponent. So similar idea of like, how do we create issues? One of the examples I did was a forward skating up towards the blue line while being covered by a defenseman. So that defenseman has to make the decision of, do I chase out? Do I stay home by the net? And at that point, there needs to be maybe some communication, especially in the playoffs when it's a loud building. That's very difficult. So now we're understanding like, okay, this was my responsibility. You're challenging the opposition to know what is your true zone of coverage and just being able to create awkward situations. And I always think that the best concept or best way to kind of put this through to a player is you have to constantly be asking questions of the defense that they need to be answering, and they need to be communicating with their teammates. And then you can also see it on the defensive side, where it's more so about problem prevention rather than problem solving. Like a defenseman that's constantly having to chip pucks out off the glass probably has an issue further up the chain rather than really good at clearing the net front and getting pucks out when it's just immediately coming right back. Like, how do you actually prevent? Or for another example of problem prevention is like you're almost sitting on a player so they never get the puck. So the play has to go to a more gummed up area, an area that's got more traffic. I also like to call them like the force defender. Like you're forcing the play where you want it to go, while not really screaming in your face. But if you're on the team of someone who's really good at that, you understand the value of bad timing by the opposition where they're making plays when they don't want to. They're putting pucks into areas where they don't want it to be, where it's more of an advantage for you and your teammates. And half the time you can able to steer the play right into your teammates where they can have the opportunity to create the turnovers and get the glory. So it's something that I noticed, but it's taken a long time to get there. And I don't think the average viewer is looking for these types of players. It's almost like the talent that whispers. So I'm always looking for players that kind of have those capabilities, those things that don't really scream at you, but you add it up over time. It makes a massive difference to what goes into winning. And so simplified that all the way down to coaches want more than just problem solvers, so more problem preventers and problem creators.
I'm going to take this one. I don't know whether it's up a level or down a level here, but what I hear you saying, and I'm simplifying this to a real situation I've experienced in the past. A coach teaching breakout teaches the wheel, and that is their breakout. And of course, the problem with that is everybody can read it and it gets overloaded, and the puck's going to turn over because there's so many bodies by the time they get to the other side. That's the reality. The tools the player needs are varieties of decisions and choices that could be made given whatever they do. And over the years, Lindstrom was asked And a number of coaches have been asked players, "Well, what's your breakout?" And Lidstrom said, "It's whatever the situation dictates." So there is no specific breakout, but I wonder if that relates to what you're saying here is, are we coaching players how to make decisions on the ice by giving them a variety of tools to see and recognize the situation? Or are we letting them down? It's one thing to pick players that can already do that. But at our level, we're trying to pick players that will learn that and be better learning that. So I'm not sure if that makes sense or not, Greg, but I'm going to just leave that with you because it's a problem we're facing. Um, we're trying to provide more tools, but every tool relates to above the shoulders and having the skill to see and think and decision make.
Well, the other piece of that is when you go to off-season training, how many players actually train that, right? Everyone's like, the game's 90% mental, but how often do we train the mental side of the game compared to just hitting the weight room, going in conditioning? Well, yes, that is very important. You've got it. I always relate to like the computer. You have to upgrade the hardware so it can, actually functionally handle the software instructions. But at the same point, a lot of times the software and the brain and the thinking is more important to reaching that next level. Like for me with my kids at high school level, I'm always trying to challenge myself to get them to a point where the issue is execution. I find that too many times we see players that they do like the skills training where it's just them going around a cone and they can pull off all these technical skills, but they don't know the timing of when to use it, and trying to get to a point where it's a failing in the incapability of their technical abilities rather than their tactical knowledge and ability to apply the when and where of playing the game or applying whatever the solution is if you're going to get a little more book savvy rather than practical. So challenging ourselves as coaches to find ways and situations to almost get to the point where, okay, I do need to do these technical drills to pick up the skills that allow them to execute tactically. I know it's going to be much different at a younger age group than what I have, but that's kind of my goal currently.
Yeah. I'm going to ask Tom if he would comment. Tom has a concept of let the game teach. And I think one of the problems is we overcoach, we overtell, we overdirect. And so, Tom, in relation to that, I wonder if you could elaborate a bit because you sort of know where we're all coming from.
Sure, I'll give it a whirl, but I want to show one thing before because this is amazing me here. I
hope
put
it
a
shows.
picture.
I'm not good at screen share, but can't.
No, I'll just show on my
It's
phone.
it's too close to the camera.
Okay, let me see.
Turn it, well, just turn it so it's flat.
Make it parallel. No, not going to show well enough, Tom.
There. Oh, you almost had it. Now you lost it. Look at it and go back to it, Tom.
Tom,
Anyways,
You lost the
it's
photo.
a picture of Tim Horton, Bobby Hull, and Gordie Howe with their shirts off. And I just tried to say being farmer strong, eh? But what amazes me about it is I have about 18,000 followers on my Ice Hockey Youth to Pro. There are 568,300 likes to the thing or post reaches to the thing. And I have no idea how that many people, got about to seeing it. So over 500,000. So, I don't know exactly how the internet works with all this kind of stuff. But the only thing that was the closest thing to that was having a picture of Alan Andrews with our book. He's hanging on to it, and there was about 200,000 on that one. But anyways, I really believe that drills, unopposed drills have their benefit because you have to be able to take a pass, you have to be able to make a pass and all this kind of stuff. But if you can't do it under pressure and people can't support you, it doesn't really transfer to a game. So the process that I really believe in is you work on these things, but they always have to go into game situations. And either, like on the breakout, you can work on, Wally's got a sequence breakout, I do, but then they have to do that breakout under pressure. So you create some kind of a pressure situation that they have to do. You can put pressure in a drill, but ideally, like a one-on-one drill, traditional one-on-one drill, you do the one-on-one, the puck is loose, you don't fight for it, you go back to line because you got to get out of the way because the next one-on-one. So ideally, you do a transition game that support follows. The defender's got to get the puck and make that breakout pass. And then it goes, another one starts the other way. So I think that is probably a better way to teach all these game situations is put them actually into game, into games. So that's pretty simple, but I don't see it happening. I see practices before I play. There's always these guys, like Greg said, right, going around the cones and doing all these incredibly terrific things, but nobody's trying to take the puck off them. And there's nothing wrong with doing that, but if that's all you do, you're not producing a very well-rounded hockey player. So it's a very difficult game it's the hardest game to be able to do because you have to be a good skater first before you can do any of this stuff. And that's a huge skill in itself. So, you have to teach them to be complete players, just not one specific segment of the game.
Craig, in terms of coaching education, this was through Hockey Canada. We talk about deliberate practice, and there's no decision making really. Passes are made from the same location at the same time and two different locations, predictable, no decision making. And then there's random practice, and that's where there's pressure, decision making, varying degrees of it to get you thinking about applying those skills. I think that's the gap in the game today, at least at the levels we work at. You mentioned the player getting the puck on, the binders on, going the length of the ice, and then thinking about options. Well, we're faced with 1-on-5 hockey here. That seems to be generally what's speaking. What you're talking about is the creative game, the interchangeable game, the spontaneous game. I really do think what you're talking about is the way the game is going and the way the game should be. It's just a matter of how do we get there? What can we do better? What can we do differently than we're doing? Is it too hard to change coaches, or is it slowly working out? Because something's happening good at the top levels because they're doing some things that are just incredible. So, any thoughts on that, Craig?
Well, I'll kind of take us where I think we're heading, which is stealing from each other. In particular, like I was laughing at the development camps that were going on for the NHL teams. A lot of times people will see the NHL teams doing it and suddenly they want to apply it for their kids, which is much, much different, as we all can attest to the younger age groups. So, what does that look like? What's good versus bad, and understanding what good practices look like for our kids, and kind of getting to Tom's point earlier around applying it to games. Like one of my favorite ones is just a 2-on-5. So there's a team breaking out. They always have 5, and then we're just progressively adding more players. So it's continuous, going from 2 to 3 to 5 4-checkers. So they're getting those game-like reads where it's not just all the same thing, and you have an actual opponent there trying to stop you, which I think is probably where we all want to go. And there are times where you may want to go through just what are some concepts within this. Again, that's where I love to use the newsletter. So I've got one on what's center support look like for the breakout. So I'm sending that, and constantly kids are harping now, low and slow, inside the dots, all of these concepts to help make the breakout more efficient and better. And then also I've got another one on defensive reads. So when they go back, almost like a quarterback in football, they're going through option 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and then finally get to the check down there at the end. But the ideas of how do we make it efficient? How do we maybe spend some time on the internal details away from the rink where we're not having to spend the time on it, and then giving them the repetition without repetitiveness that they need to see in practice so they can build up the experience of being able to read pressure and find the correct option, solution, whatever you want to call it. And obviously starting small and then continuously building it harder and harder and harder. And I like to, if we can, build to the point where we're making it harder than the game. So like, for example, inverted rushes, where it's instead of a 3-on-2, it's a 2 against 3. So you've got 3 defenders and you've got 2. Find ways to find solutions there. Some groups get to it, some don't. Obviously, that's where the coaching comes in, of trying to find that Goldilocks of too easy, too hard, and what's just right for our group and our players. But getting to that idea of challenging our players properly and just giving them the repetitions without being repetitive on it's always the same movement solution over and over again. That's the real key, I think, for getting the translation into a game where it may not show up exactly how you thought, but the players have enough recognition and pattern understanding to see what might be available to me, what can be that tool in the tool belt that I need to pull out for this situation to have success.
Hal, I see a pensive look on your face.
Well, no, I mean, I agree with all of it. And, I've watched a couple Bantam ball games, it's August, but games this last week. I was on the bench for one and I was in the stands for another one. And, these kids they go off and play all these games in the off season with zero coaching and zero structure. And the second game I watched, these were our kids on one team from our program, and there were only 9 kids total. And there's nothing good happening out there at all. And and there's 2 coaches, one standing on each end of the bench, and their parents, and they say nothing, which is probably okay, actually, because I don't think they know what to say. But when I've noticed here in Minnesota that the size of teams continues to get smaller to where you've only got 12 or 13 skaters, and so it creates problems in terms of how do you play the kids? I mean, a lot of that was done to keep the short bench syndrome away, because you barely have enough players to play a full game. You might have 2 lines and 3 or 4 defensemen. And oh, by the way, if you have 4 defensemen, 2 of them never played defense before. They just ended up, that's where they end up. And they don't have any, I mean, here they are at 14 Bantams, I guess. They don't have any basic understanding of the structure of the game. Greg says low and slow. I like that for the centers, because that's what we teach. You got to be behind the puck, not having your ass pointed at your winger as you're racing up ice, because even if you get the pass, you're going to get lit up. And I think it's just super hard as winter coaches, and if you're pretty good at this, you have to retrain the kids at the beginning of every season, because they've had so many bad habits developed in the off season. And I have a couple of my players were on the first game, and one's a defenseman, and he loves to take that puck out of the D zone and start stick handling his way up the ice. And, he gets by the first guy, maybe the second guy, third guy always gets him. And it's a turnover out neutral ice. And he does it over and over and over. We talk about it, and I finally just said, how high can you count? Well, I can count a long ways. I go, well, can you count to 2? Yep, I can count to 2. When you hit 2, the puck needs to leave your stick and go somewhere else. And, because he just, and he played for me last year. I mean, it's an ongoing habit that you have to break. And yet, as a winter coach, I have way less time to do it than they have time to not do it right. That makes sense. They have spring hockey, they have summer hockey, they have fall hockey. And then here comes the winter. And they get away with so many bad habits along the way. And, and when they're 13 and 14, they don't really, I'll ask the coach, how was the game last night? Well, we lost, 3-1. That's not the answer I'm looking for. Because it doesn't matter. I said, who are we playing? He goes, well, I don't know, a team from Maple Grove. Well, what level? I mean, there's no, so I go and watch, and it's a little frustrating because what we're trying to put kids into an environment where they are thinking about what's going on out there. But most of them, or for a lot of the kids, they don't see very much of the game. They don't watch hockey. I'm trying to figure out, that Power Player app that I shared with. Who shared that with us? Was that
I did.
Yeah, so I'm working with those guys, and we're going to put video clips out to the kids to watch. But my experience from the last 3 years is maybe half of them will look at them, maybe. And then we come back the next day, and I'll say, who watched that video? What'd you see in that video? Well, half the kids didn't even look at it. So their attention is they're so pulled in so many different directions. So I'm just kind of rambling around. I mean, it is it's what makes coaching so interesting, is being able to solve some of these teaching and creating the right kind of environment so the kids can learn. And it is okay to be wrong. It's okay. I mean, every shift, there's something happens in every shift. As Tom says, the answer's in the net. But I love that. That was so great.
I got a story for Hal.
Yeah.
So World War I, they called him the someone's got a thing on. They call it the third cigarette rule. So you never pass the third cigarette.
Yeah.
First time you light up, the sniper on the other side sees, okay, there's someone out there. Second guy takes a puff. All right, now we can see where the group is. Third guy takes a puff and he gets his head shot off. Same thing with our defense and beating that first guy, second guy, and the third one's the one where it's the puck taken off him. Call it the third cigarette. It's amazing how that's no matter where you go, someone has that. And then Peter, a little bit to you before I kick it off or kick it back to you. So I love club hockey. It's getting really good, by the way, too, as you're probably well aware of. But I used to be at the University of Akron helping out there, and I helped with the recruiting, and I would see Pittsburgh, Cleveland, and Columbus. And Pittsburgh, you can play club and high school all in one go. Does not matter. So those kids are playing like 80 games a year. It's unbelievable. They play high school during the week. They play their travel teams during the weekend. Ton of games. It's like the pattern recognition, and we'll say like the hockey IQ was off the charts for those kids, but they were almost always physically underdeveloped from a capability there. Then I would see Columbus kids, which in Ohio, you can only have club or high school. So they'd be in great physical condition, fantastic. They'd have like the ability to pull off any skill that you wanted, but they just had no idea how to play the game. And then I'd go to Cleveland, which is kind of in the middle, and they'd have like a mix of the two. So I would be like at these different events, and I could tell like where a player pretty much was from based on just watching how they played the game between like the three cities. If there was it was truly amazing. So Peter just wanted to share that. I was always cracking up. I'm like, yeah, I guarantee he's from Pittsburgh, and lo and behold, he's from Peters Township or something.
So
No, sure. I mean, I think too, the other thing when I was coaching prep school, it has certainly changed now, but the similar to what you're talking about, the Florida kid and the California kid had an incredible set of hands because of the weather. They're outside all the time. They're on their rollerblades and they're doing what they're doing, but they lack that skating ability. And you could tell at tryouts, kid had great hands, but was not, as mobile as the other kids. Same thing. You could tell, all right, that California kid or Florida kid, and sure enough, there they were. That's certainly changed. So that part of it's been pretty fun. But Wally, what I want to address was what you had mentioned about earlier. You were talking about how do you develop the coaches from the low and slow, like Greg's talking about, to the technical versus tactical method to our game. And I think probably one of the issues is it's a time related thing, I feel like, because everyone does, generally speaking, in their lives what is comfortable to them. So if you're of a certain age group where, and this goes way back, which it's pretty much gone, I think, is there was a time where you skated in your lane. If you were a left wing, you were going up and down that wing. And God forbid you ended up on the right side, you came to the bench, your coach reamed you out because you play the left side, they play the middle, the other one plays the right side. So it's a function too of you being comfortable of what you've learned. Obviously the game has changed where it's skaters 1 through 5 and everyone has to be interchangeable and have the ability to know when to move, where to move, and how to move into those spots because the game is so much faster. So I think part of it is going to be just time as the new, if you will, innovations and the way the game evolves. You want your coaches to be able to evolve with that. And that then trickles down, I think, to your players. And that's how the coaches will develop, how they were actually taught, because you still do have that mix, like I say, of very much old thinking, right? Break out, put your butt right to the boards, turn, face, make that one first pass, as opposed to maybe dropping a puck, having some support, misdirection, those kinds of things there too. So I think a lot of it has something to do with just what we know and what we're comfortable with. And Tom, to your point, when you were talking about, and I really love it, obviously with my history in agriculture, about Farm Strong, there's a picture, which I got to try to find it and send it to you. It's a picture of Bobby Hull back in the day pitching hay. Now,
Right?
That was the picture I was trying to show very poorly.
Right. So I mean, we've all grown up when we were young. We all did the thing with with our buddies with the sledgehammer where you tried to hold it by the end and pick up that hammer, right, with your arm extended. Well, you got Bobby Hull picking up an actual bale of hay with a pitchfork and flinging it onto the back of a truck. So that Farm Strong really, I think, counts for something. But again, it's all about evolution. It's all about the evolution. And Greg, like to your point, right? Like you've got a little bit of a mix of that, right? You've got like that Cleveland kid might be somewhat of that Farm Strong kid because they played, but they also had the ability to, to get themselves physically stronger in some fashion. In Connecticut, if you play AAA hockey, you're not playing for your high school. So there is that set pace, and there's always that pushback, which high schools don't like it because they tend to lose their better players to prep schools. because at the prep school level, they're able to concentrate on that kind of thing a little bit more. Or those kids will even go play U18 in hopes of making the junior team down the road. So I think it's all about what we're all comfortable with and what we're able to learn moving forward as players, which then hopefully translates to what we can bring to these kids as a coach as well, if that makes any sense.
Craig, I want to mention one thing, and Peter, it relates to what you're saying. We're sort of looking for a magic bullet. Well, I think there is a magic bullet. Your three cigarette rule. Low and slow the middle. Magic bullets are those kinds of verbal cue words that sync with the decision making and what I'm supposed to do. And Jordan's on and Tom's on, and I think the biggest magic bullet of all, we're talking about passing. Well, passing is not just a skill. It's the timing and support, the anticipation of all players to support, be available, and the passer to create time and space to get the skates up ice, to get to the third cigarette phase. Jordan, I don't know if you're on or if you're in your office at school, but we've done passing statistics here. And I think, Greg, this statistic itself and the three cigarette rule, Jordan, you came up with a new idea on tracking passes that I think is the essence of the game. And if we just had people appreciate the value of the pass, and I wonder, Jordan, if you could talk a bit about what you've added to what Tom started in terms of keeping track of completed passes during games and just throwing it out there for awareness sake.
Thanks, Wally. Yeah, good chat here. It's I'm not sitting in my office in the school, but I am in the school. I'm the closest to I can be to the Wi-Fi router, the only one that's working in our brand new school. So as I'm trying to be on summer holidays, but it's not really taking very well this year. But oh well, we'll keep going. But yeah, Wally, giving credit where credit is due, this is actually Tom's thing with keeping track of passes. And when you showed that to me, what Tom was doing and how it was really helping the U13s become a far better puck possession, more offensive group, I adopted it last year with U18 players and had a parent in the stands keeping track of passes. But the other piece with it was keeping track of consecutive passes. So if they got to the 3 or 4 or the odd time 5, the parent was keeping track of that number as well. And what we were finding is anytime that you were completing more than 3 passes in a row, it was usually leading to a good offensive opportunity. Because you were definitely possessing it, definitely getting it deep in their zone, and then being able to get a good offensive chance off that. The kids started to really want to understand it, and they set goals for themselves on the number of passes per period that they were going to get, as well as goals for number of consecutive passes. And it was a good buy-in piece in understanding the importance of sharing the puck. And I think that that's one thing that we've seen. I know that you guys are talking about those highly skilled players, and one of the challenges that I've had for some of the highly skilled players is that idea of sharing the puck. Give that puck to someone else to get it back in a better position, so that you're not doing all the work yourself, or as Hal's player, losing it in the neutral zone after doing a whole lot of work. I had a coach, Hal, his saying on that one was, "Don't be yours the stick where the play goes to die." So he always kept track of which players the play died on their stick, and if you were it too many times, you didn't want to be holding that record, because it usually came with a different conversation if it was more than once. But those sorts of things. And Wally, when you're talking about magic bullets and some of those things, Peter, I really like what you're saying about people understanding that their own reality. And I think that that's something in being in education, you see that as I'm sitting in a brand new school here that we're opening in the fall, parents wanted to come and tour this. We toured the students earlier on, and the parents wanted to come. Some of them quite indignant that they didn't get the opportunity yet, but we didn't have any furniture or equipment in the building. And so the kids, because their reality is education right now, they could envision what this school will be like, well, in another 2 weeks when they get here. But the parents, because most of them went to school at minimum 15 years ago, they don't see the school the same way. They can't envision it the same way the kids can. So that's the same with the game. When you talk about the structure that used to be there and those sorts of things, sometimes as coaches, we're trying to be innovative and move the game to where the game is going, and parents don't see it. Like last night, I was working with a group of 09s and doing a lot of forward angle or surf angle stuff with them, and in having to put in the rule no skating backwards, so that the kids would get that understanding of forward angle, getting shoulders in front of shoulders, hips in front of hips, and going hips through hands through the stick, and angling off and taking the puck. Well, it's one of those pieces that I'm sure that there were parents in the stands that were scratching their heads and wondering, what the heck is this guy doing? My kid's a D. They're supposed to skate backwards. Well, we started with the backwards striding first, but then went into the stepping up and surfing off. And I was fortunate to have Cassie Betnall on the ice. Wally, Cass just got home from, graduated from Colgate this past year. And so I asked her, Cass, how many times did your D step up and take that forward angle? And she goes, oh, all the time. And I said, well, why didn't they choose to continue to skate backwards? And without even prompting her, she goes, because they give up too much time and space. And so it was one of those things that just helping the kids to understand that, and hopefully the kids can translate that back to the parents, so that we're all learning together that the game is moving from what it was. And Peter, I grew up farm boy strong too, but fortunately for my life, we went from square bales to round bales, so I didn't have to handle too many of those square bales, but we had to roll out round bales by hand, and in the wintertime with bedding cattle and that sort of stuff. So you got to be pretty good at pushing things were well over your weight. So, but yeah, there was my dad and grandfather, their rule was if you needed to go to the gym, you weren't working hard enough.
Guys, I'd like to get Craig back in the fold here. Craig, I'm looking at another topic, predicting future top level performance. What is it? Relative age effect. What correlates to future success? And Jordan, having Greg on, I'm trying to promote people getting his newsletter and reading it. My primary motivation is looking at the video, because when you're looking and talking about the tactical skills like surfing and puck protection, every newsletter article that Greg puts together, it's supplemented with articles and unbelievable videos, short, succinct videos to give you a visual image of how to do things. So, Craig, can you talk to that predicting future top level performance presentation?
Yeah, so that article's got links to some research papers on what is coming out, and kind of the idea, and we all heard this, how January birthdays tend to have more high level hockey players in it. Many reasons for that: better coaching, more physical development, which allows you to get into more high performance tracks. But a lot of times, particularly in soccer, you'll see players that get cut at age 14, 15, and then go on to be pretty much the best player of their generation. So a classic example here is Declan Rice, cut at age 14, joined a different academy, and then by age 17 was already a regular starter for a team at the highest level. Had 3 years of being the young player of the year, and an England international at age 20, and probably their best midfielder now at age 21. Maybe he's 22 now, but he's fantastic. And there's many to that where maybe didn't have the physical abilities and maturity yet. From that standpoint, the relative age effect is just the fact that you're the oldest in your age group, which at the youngest of ages is, a high percentage of development. And as I have a 1-year-old home, I can tell you, the difference between him at the beginning of the year versus the end of the year is pretty massive. He's going from 4 pounds and change to now he's well over 20. Huge, massive gap there. So idea of just maybe do some bio banding, some ideas around that, and just some studies looking into what may predict future success, which is a lot more around do the kids have competitiveness? Do they have self-efficacy, which would be the ability to produce a desired or intended result, and then just expecting some success before it's actually achieved. On the opposite side, factors that were found to be negative predictors of future success is fear or failure, body anxiety, and just disrupted concentration, so the inability to concentrate and push through, which actually kind of drives down to personality drives everything. And I don't know about you guys, but I've always found that the best players that I've been able to coach or be around in some capacity tend to have some level of stubbornness to them, bar none. Like there's no getting around that fact. And it's just a matter of how do they manage it. So if I'm looking for maybe someone to take a bet on, I'm actually looking for a little bit of stubbornness, a little bit of maybe some grumpiness in there. Clearly we don't want it to go to the extreme, but it definitely helps push through to that next level of performance, and having that ability to have the success and stick with the process that will lead to that. So I do want to mention, coming back, since we're talking about farming and that quite a bit, is coaching is like farming. Like you just because you yell at the crops doesn't mean that they're going to grow faster. It's about the environment you create for the crops to grow. And something I did want to bring up, and I had notes on, just something that I wanted to touch on in this call at some point of, coaches coach the environment. You provide the love and the care and the respect and show what's possible, give ideas. I look at John Wooden, like what was his coaching? It was someone did a research study. It was always between 2 to 20 seconds. And it was just like, yeah, have you thought about trying this? What do you think about this? Those types of kind of feedback and comments. And then for us, like, how do we create better learners? Like athletic learning is such a concept. And Jordan, you probably have a good insight to this working in the school. And I don't know if any of you else have worked directly with students all day and learners, but just the capability of the ones that are able to learn well versus the ones that don't, and helping bridge the gap or push them to a higher level of ability to pick up information, knowledge, and in our case, translate that to an athletic performance, is a massive difference. I had 2 years ago, 2 kids walk in the door. Both had played like house hockey. And I was like, okay, both have the athletic base to grow and have success. I'm curious what's going to happen. One player is probably going to be our captain this year, growing like a weed, turned into a fantastic player. And one was just stagnant the whole time. And the only explanation I can get is just the one kid is an excellent, excellent learner, while the other one struggles, one with some maturity issues, but 2, doesn't have the focus, the ability to push through, doesn't have that stubbornness when things get hard, doesn't really push through as much, or just like the kid just goes and shoots pucks and thinks that's enough. Those types of things. So the idea of how do we create better learners is definitely something I've been exploring for a few years now, and definitely something I'm working towards getting better implementing. Because I want to be effective as a coach, but also there's the other person on the other side. How do I help them be their own best coach, own best leaders, own best growers, learners, etc.?
Jordan, how do we create better learners?
That's a good one, Greg. Just so you know, both Wally and Tom taught for a lot of years in schools. Both were excellent phys ed educators in from everything all accounts I hear. How do you create better learners is, I think it comes back to awareness. And I think it's awareness on all counts, meaning awareness of the learner themselves in how they learn, and the modalities in which they prefer to learn, as well as the educator or the coach in this piece, in understanding if you have 20 players, you have 20 individuals. So you need to get down to understanding each of those individuals and how you learn best. When you talk about a player that's maybe a little bit resistant to change, or a little more hard-headed, you have to understand that how you can open up them to being more receptive to what you're saying. And sometimes, like I'll use the example of working with humans, in that I have had a head building operator in a school that his first answer to me asking him to do something was always no. And I learned that the no didn't mean that no, he wasn't going to do it. The no meant that he needed time to think about why you're asking him to do it and what was the why behind it. And I think that's the big thing with learners today, is they're more aware of things, and they want to know the why first. It used to be that was one of the fun things about working with female athletes, is they always needed the why. And as soon as they had the why, they would do anything for you. Whereas male athletes, they would try what you asked them to do once, maybe twice. And if it didn't seem to work for them, well, they were back to their old ways. Now it seems that both want to know the why. And usually if they can get that why piece, then they will go with it. So I like what you're asking. How do we create better learners? And that's something that I think that we need to ask ourselves when we're heading to the rink every time, to work with our players and that. And I think that it goes back to, again, getting to know them. One of the things that I've done, and it's not mine, again, another thing I've stolen that's turned out to be a good idea, was a season opener survey. And the two things that I ask the players in that survey, one is, how do you prefer to learn? Because, as I said, most students are far more cognizant of their own learning style, whether they prefer everything visual or, lots of hands-on kinesthetic, or whether it's auditory and they can learn from hearing it. But then the other piece that I ask is, how do you prefer your feedback? Because that's the other piece. The feedback is reinforcing that learning piece. So, I said, outside of you asking me to yell at you, I said that because that's a modality of teaching that I don't use. I will not be yelling at you to motivate you. Beyond that, I said I can provide feedback how you like, because some, they want feedback immediate, some don't want the feedback in the moment, and they want it after. And so it's working with them to understand those pieces. But I know Tom there and Wally, Peter, you guys probably have other things to add in there. And then Greg, I just have one more question with you in your research on seeking out talent. Where, I'm just going to ask you to respond to this after the other guys have added on this topic, but where do you see the patience in waiting for late bloomers and the importance of finding those late bloomers? But Peter, I see you have your hand up.
Yeah, good morning, Jordan. I love the idea of everyone of understanding that your players are different. So my going back probably last time, because people are probably tired of hearing about farms, but my history is in horticulture, and I think that actually was one of the things that has helped me over the years as a coach and developing as a coach, because each plant needs a different environment in order to flourish. So some need a little bit more space to grow. Some can grow in tighter, more confined areas. Some need more fertilizer, some need less, some need more water, some need less, some need more sun, some need more shade. So getting to know what your individual players need as a form of motivation is first and foremost and key to being a successful coach. There's not a blanket, hey, my way or the highway, right? Again, that was something, but that's incredibly archaic, and you're not doing kids any favors if that's your method of how you're coaching today. So getting to know them as individuals, understanding their situations, and to me over the years, and I think you guys are probably on the same page, it certainly made coaching more fun. It certainly made it much more interesting and allowed me as a coach and as a person to grow. So that's something that a byproduct, I think, of what the sport of hockey has done for me anyway. But yeah, to your point, individuals, how do we reach each different individual? And again, I had plans that in a year, perfect, ready to go, saleable crop. I had other plants 3 to 5 years before they were ready. So everyone also develops at their different pace. So having all that, having patience and being able to learn who needs what, difficult, 100%, but really a heck of a lot of fun once you really get into it.
Jordan, you had a question for Craig, but I know it relates to the question I want to bring Tom in on. And it relates to Tom, that girl that was born December 31st. And what you're going through with her now coming into her second year at U13 hockey. Can you talk to that? And then, Jordan, we'll get back to the question you threw at Craig.
Well, I had a girl last year. She was born like the 30th, December 30th. So she's 2 days away from being a peewee, right, at U13. But she was the biggest girl on the team, had good skills, everything, but just total panic when she got the puck. It was like a hand grenade. And she was at our summer camp and she looked really good, because now she's playing with, she's the same age as basically the first years, but she's had that experience. But that's really tough if like you were talking, you're really a lot younger. I was lucky because when I played, the date was August 1st. I was born in October. So I was in the first 3 months of that. And I was really small. And in the school system, it was a little different because it was January 1st. So I was in both those situations. And when you're way smaller than everybody, you have to be way better to be able to play anything. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how she does this year. That she's a little older, because she's quite big. And I want to make a point about how you evaluate players. I played a lot of hockey with Bob Murdoch after we were old guys, and he coached. He was coach of the year at the NHL, coached a lot in Europe and all that. And he told me the one stat that he paid attention to, he had this done. Every time you touch the puck, you get a plus or a minus. And if your team basically is at 65%, you have a really good chance of winning the game. If they're at 70%, you're probably winning big. And if your team's at 60%, you're losing big. And he said and then you can do it to individual players. You keep stats. So we did that when I was helping coach the University of Calgary men. And then I would do that in the Red Bulls for the pro teams when I was watching. I'd keep some games, I kept that stat. And it's a really, really valid stat. And it's the same thing with evaluating a player. If that player, the same thing is if the play dies on their stick every time, they're not helping you very much. And it really shows, what you have to, it shows what you have to work on in practice too, and who needs to work on what is that stat. I remember we were playing the Western Final, and our top scorer, we were playing Babcock's team. And our top scorer could hardly touch the puck. Like he was, he only had a couple of stats there, and we talked to him and said, geez, you're not involved in the game here, Jason. And he picked it up and played, pretty good after that. So it's a really valid stat. The person taking it has to know the game as well. But I wanted to just throw that in as a thing. And another thing I heard that I thought was really interesting is they went the greatest players. They went over a whole bunch of games, Gretzky, Lemieux, and all the top players played. And Lemieux and all of the guys like Lidstrom and all these kind of guys, they made about 4 passes into the slot a game, that created scoring chances. And Gretzky averaged 11. And nobody, he was almost triple the next highest guy as far as getting the puck and putting it on somebody's stick in a scoring area. So that, it causes the question, how do we as coaches improve that skill in players? So those are 2 points I wanted to make there.
Jordan, I wonder if you could bring up that question you were directing at Craig, and we get Craig back into the flow.
Sure. It was just a quick question, Greg, on your research into evaluating prospects and players, and then I guess the value of looking for late bloomers.
Yeah. So, I mean, late bloomers, there's twofold to this. So one is like, for example, say you're, we'll use soccer because there's a direct all the way to the first team. There's no drafts or anything like that. So like there's an incentive to keep these players that you think are promising, they may not be performing at the highest level today, versus some of these kids, maybe they should be playing AA rather than AAA, and that's just the right level for them. But we're not writing off the players. I got to remember the country it was. I want to say it was Finland, but they were tracking kids that were in their national camp at 15 and 16 versus them being in the camp at even 18 and 19 towards like World Juniors. And it was like 6 kids were the same. The rest of the roster completely turned over. It's like it was a very small percentage as you went through the puberty ages and beyond of what actually led to performances. Everyone started equaling out to their physical maxes or in that direction. So for some coaches, it's the right decision. Yeah, the kid's a late physical bloomer. Do they need the challenge? Do they what is the proper place for them? And the second piece would just be like, if you're in a club where you've got a professional team all the way down to youth academies, of which players do you want to keep around as potential for that? Going back to that Declan Rice example, even in his first year at the academy, the new one he got into, literally the academy director took a stand because everyone else is like, well, he's just physically behind, like he's not keeping up with the group. And that guy stood out and said, no, we're keeping the kid. And then 2 years later, he's starting for them, in the most valuable, the best soccer league in the entire world. So there's the different ecosystems. Like for me, when I think about that goes into it. And then following up on learning styles, I like this. The second piece about feedbacks, I find that's the biggest variance. I'd love to see some research and just like what's a good timing of feedback. Because I found the same with like some kids, you want to give it to them immediately because otherwise they're going to completely forget about it. Other kids, they're rethinking back on the stuff and you can still have a conversation on it. So the timing of that is right. But from all the research that I've looked at, all the guys I talked to with USA Hockey, there's no such thing as like a learning style. So I'd be curious to dive in further on that. I can't find anything that validates it other than it sounds like a consultant may have come up with it and now it's stuck into a lot of school systems. I could be wrong on this, but as I've tried to dive down that rabbit hole, I'm finding a lot of dead ends, finding it being a thing. But I definitely think the feedback piece, there's a lot to that. And then the second I just want to follow up is we talk a lot about from our importance as a coaches and helping. I'm just thinking about, like, if you threw a kid in an environment and you just gave them skills, like, what is a good learner? What does it look like? And just being able to equip the kids with those skills that we're not there. We're not helping them at all. They're just thrown in the deep end. Because I find whenever I bring up the conversation, it often ends up being on us as teachers, which I understand and get. And that's immediately where our head's going to go, is like, what am I going to do? But I'm saying if we completely remove ourselves, like, what does a good learner look like? And how do we help kids get to become better learners? Like, for example, something I try to do with my kids is a feel through. Like, if you're going to go do a physical skill, like, do a feel through while you're in line. Like, what does it look like you're about to do? Like, what are you about to ask your body? Like, feel through that. And that is a good way for them to pick up the reps quicker, is to mentally go through that rep of what it's going to feel like physically before they actually physically go through the rep.
Just what you said about feel through. There was a couple of Canadian groups, I think the volleyball girls that advanced, they talked about their visualization, literally thinking about what the heck they were doing and seeing it. And I think that's something that, Jordan, you've played with a little, we all have over time, but it's a tool. Jordan, as Craig was talking, whenever he gets into learning and learning styles and research, I wonder what you were thinking about that, the idea of learning styles and how it applies in education and in terms of what teachers are doing and could do better or differently.
Well, going back and Greg, this learning modalities goes back, first kind of came in, I would say, in the 90s. I've been, by the color of my hair, I've been in education for quite a while. So it was something that a lot of research was done back in the 90s, and the modalities of it, the three main were kinesthetic, meaning hands-on, visual for visual learning, and then auditory for those that could learn from what they hear. There has been research done on it since then, and what they're finding is that there are preferential ones, but what they're finding is that most people learn in a blend. So, but what it was focusing in on those different things. And but one of the biggest things to do with it that came out of the research that probably is the most important piece isn't just those three modalities. The most important piece is that the brain research was that we'll learn a modality that isn't our preferred for probably about 12 minutes. So the importance was needing to change up lessons about every 12 minutes or so. So you're doing something different so that you're not just all sit and get, because if you sit and listen to a lecture, it will probably start to turn into Charlie Brown's teacher around that 10 to 12 minute mark if you're not actively taking notes, or if you're not engaged in asking questions or those sorts of things. So that's kind of where that research piece went. It's ever evolving with the brain research and pieces that are going in now, but it's just being aware of all of those modalities and those sorts of things. I think helps a bit. I know that Tom, with his lesson plan, practice planning, he includes a video on his site with every description that he has, and I think that helps to understand the diagrams and those sorts of pieces as well. So all of those sorts of things, just being aware of that, I think helps out that way. You're muted, Wally.
I just want to get back to talking about feel through, Greg. And I think correct me if I'm wrong or elaborate on it. The idea of feel through means become aware of what you're doing and more conscious of it. Is that correct? And everything we're talking about here, is the student engaged?
Yeah, that's kind of what I've understood in the research and the rabbit holes that I've gone down is the learner engaged and how are we making it engaging, rather than the actual like modality. So, yeah, I mean, that's just something I'm always trying to figure out is how do I just basically make my players more engaged, more in control, rather than being passive on it or allowing them to have passes. Like classic example is I don't use a whiteboard. So I'm explaining all of my drills and then I'm asking players, I'm checking for understanding. And they all have to be attentive because I don't allow the same player to answer every single time. Like I'm going through the team throughout the weeks to make sure that everyone's engaged, or if someone looks like they're completely lost, that's the person I'm going for. Like, what questions do you have? Where did I lose you? Or like, what are the 3 key items that we're about to focus on? Or what's the one item where we're doing? Or what's the one rule in this small-sided game that we're about to have? And just finding ways to have them engaged, a part of the process where I'm trying to remove myself, even though you still have to provide structure and leadership, etc., but put the onus on them. Same thing with trying to get rid of a whistle. I do a lot of activities that don't require whistles. So they are in charge of making sure that you don't have 2 shooters going down on a goalie at the same time when there should only be one. So now they're having to have the awareness. They're having to read, be aware in their environment, and growing them that direction. Again, back to, I forget who said awareness, but awareness is a word that stood out of just awareness of everything. So same thing, like awareness of what's going on around the ice, not just what the heck you're doing. I find that is a major step as we're growing these young people is we're all stuck in our own worlds and understanding there's more people out here than just yourself trying to accomplish something. So how do we engage and go beyond and have the awareness? Those are kind of the rabbit holes I'm finding and I'm testing around with. And Wally, you'll appreciate this. I tried this summer to test the hypothesis between whiteboard and no whiteboard. So I started using the whiteboard a little bit. And I have to say, I'm 100% completely stopping that. It is so terrible on so many levels that I find the whiteboard is almost, it is getting in the way is what I found, going back and trying to do it the old fashioned way, from where I've gone to getting rid of the whiteboard, and just thought I'd share that anecdote. That you'd appreciate the fact that it wasn't just something I tested around with and moved away, but I actually wanted to go back and see how it worked.
Craig, I've just earmarked that 1 minute 1 hour 30-second mark because I haven't used a whiteboard for 15 to 20 years. Because every time I did, I had to stop the drill, go over it again. Not necessarily the whiteboard, but I didn't get just on with it. So I said, skip the whiteboard. Let's just point, get going. And it works. And I'm going to edit this part of it. For you to express yourself that strongly about it, trying it again, because when I do high performance coach evaluations, I keep track of the time at the whiteboard. And many are guilty of being at it, 5 minutes, which is quite long.
If you have that level of complexity, you need to shrink it down and build up to that. Like start simple and you can build up to that complexity, but just immediately going there's so many issues with that.
So I'm wondering if challenging a high performance coach to try not using a whiteboard, because they'll become more aware of the learner's capacity and may change the way they coach, because we're conditioned to whiteboards. I know, Craig, I'll share this story. Mentoring high performance coaches, I had 9 under my umbrella with one team, and we observed 3 coaches would observe the coaching on the bench from behind the bench in terms of communication use of the whiteboard on the bench. We had the other coaches watching the game and evaluating players. And there was a point where all three coaches, including the head coaches, had a whiteboard and were talking to a player while the game was on. So they weren't in tune with the now of the game, the spontaneity of it, the reinforcement of the good things going on. And that really startled me. But as a provincial association, that was the modality of the time. Whiteboard, use the whiteboard, drill explanation, make sure it's clear. And I think we've gotten over conditioned to that. And I think getting away from that is something to at least experiment with if you haven't tried it before, because I'll never go back. I know right now, Tom, your practices, they're multi-detailed. The best part of them is the video. I see the drill. I can look at the diagram. But I've received Kyle Lundvig's practices. There is no diagram. There's no details. There's a title. And I know in Kyle's mind, he knows what he's going to run. He's done those drills over a period of time. And fortunately, he's going to be running most of the ice times of that age group. But he's into that kind of a mode where I've never seen him use a whiteboard. He sees the game, talks the game, visualizes it in his mind, and his players, I think, pick up on that fact where they're not looking at X's and O's and thinking X's and O's. So any more to add to that, Craig? And it seems chaotic. It doesn't seem to make sense, but that's the nature of the beast.
Peter's had his hand up for quite a while.
Yeah, we got some hands raised.
Okay, Peter, go
I
ahead.
put my hand up, so.
Yeah, no, I saw you were first, but mine's gonna be real short. Not that yours won't be. So Wally, I've done what you're talking about, and Greg, what you're talking about. No whiteboard, and the first time you do that, the sheer terror on the second, third kid in line, who immediately becomes the 11th and 12th kid in line, as they shuffle back because they have no idea what's going on. So Wally, what you said about the ability to point as it's going, because there is that visual learner. There is that kid that learns better visually and needs to see it happen and is somewhat scared to death the first time you don't show them something in sense of a whiteboard, but they can learn from seeing the drill happen. And you see them. The great thing about that is you see them now actually talking to the kid in front or behind them, obviously trying to get some explanation of what the heck is going on. But I think, Wally, the fact that, you do make the time to point, direct in that sense, you're helping that visual learner, because that kid can't be forgotten either. So I think it's a blend of both, and I think it's great.
Yeah, what I do is I have kind of a process. And the first time, first of all, I don't have a whiteboard on the glass and turn my back. I just have a small, and the first time I show something, I show it on the whiteboard so people know where they stand, where the pucks go, and take about 1 minute to explain everything. And I give it a name. So now when they hear that name, they know, what it's all about. And Terry Johnson always said, the first time you do a drill, it's just for the players to learn the drill. Where do I go? What do I do? What's the sequence? The second time you start, maybe making some corrections, this kind of stuff. Third time, they should all know it. And what I also do is the first time I'll use whistles, and then I'll call them all in and I'll say, okay, now you can see when the last player shoots as well as I can. I want you starting on your own. And you'll see some of my practices, there's absolutely no whistles. And it all depends what stage they are in learning that process. And some things you do need whistles. I play games that they change on the go, or they change on the whistle, so you have to have the whistle. But I think the first time you really need the players have to know where they go, where the puck goes, and have a kind of an idea how it goes. And that's my belief. And I think if you're going to do it without a whiteboard, you better be very succinct in how you explain things. Because I know I've listened to people describing things and I have no idea at the end of it what they just told the players to do. So you have to be really good if you're not going to use a whiteboard at all.
I feel like it challenges you in a very good way. When you start doing it, you figure out where you are terrible at providing an explanation and making you into that. So I spot on, Tom.
Yeah, I don't think I like Tim always says, there's not a always do or never do. You know, you find that if it's needed there a little and then get away from it. The more the players, like you say, Greg, the more the players are engaged. Like I watch the Flames, one of the only times the pros tend to use whistles all the time. And I watched them do this. One group did this one drill, a 2-on-1, and they were going the whistles. And then the next ice time, another coach did the same drill, and it was started by the defenseman. And when the play ended at one end, then the group that should go there went. So it wasn't, it all depended on how the play went. And the next coach just left it up to the defenseman to watch and see when the play's over. Then they started with a pass to a forward who did some stuff and did a 2-on-1 back. And, like you say, you get the players more engaged then. And, it's more their drill than, being a robot kind of a thing. And that allows you to coach instead of be a traffic cop.
Exactly. You can now actually coach. You can be in the back of the line. You're not just standing over in the corner with a whistle or actually having to run it. That's one of the bigger things as well. I just think there's so many benefits to getting rid of the whistles and whiteboards as much as we can. Whiteboard's completely out. Whistles, I still have yet to figure out how to completely get rid of them. But for the most part, find ways to minimize those two, at least if they're, needed time.
And sometimes I use the duck call too. So that's Wally's thing.
Ooh, I like that.
I want to mention the word intervention. When coaches are running a drill and I'm observing and I see something going on that needs to be addressed because the purpose of the drill isn't being accomplished, that to me is sort of the breaking point of intervention. Good coaches will intervene and make the point on that drill because the purpose of it isn't being accomplished. And I saw that last year with one of our U18 AA coaches. It was just excellently well timed. He just demanded more paying attention and being aware of the tactical detail of the purpose of the drill, and the drill went really well. And I know, Tom, we've talked about it many times where they couldn't do this drill and we stopped them once and did stationary passing so they get the feel of it. They went back to the drill and it was smooth. So I think there's an intervention of knowing when to use your whistles, especially in the case of a drill. I think in terms of safety, it's the first priority. You've got players skating in opposite direction and going to collide, you better blow the whistle. And I've seen that happen at a national team level. So it's, I think you have to have the whistle there, but when to use it, my question is what you're doing accomplishing a purpose? The purpose? Do you know the purpose of what you're doing, the why of your drill? Do they have the tactical skills to, in fact, do that drill? Or do you have to intervene and have them work on those skills a little bit more and get back to it? Or maybe add that skill element into a drill in itself. on a regular basis so they get better at it and can do the drill that'll show up in the game. So it's an art, and one of my friends who's written a book on leadership, the art of coaching is doing the right stuff, the right amount, the right time. And that's what we're talking about here. We're still deciding that as we converse. So now, Craig, are there any thoughts about your next topic? When you think of what you're going to do for your next article, do you take notes during the week before, or do you suddenly come up with a brainwave on the weekend, or what's your routine?
I'm scheduled out about 3 months. I may have something that comes up that I really want to write on, but for the most part, I am well ahead of the game. I may need to go back and just do a few things or pull a few clips, but for the most part, I'm already writing for October at this point.
So that far ahead in your thinking.
Yeah. So if you're reading something on the newsletter, there's a good one. I've probably already tested it out if it's something technical or tactical or coaching related. And two, it's probably 3 months in the review mirror of where I'm already on to something new.
Yeah.
At that point. So some examples. I'm going to do one, a coach's lesson on developing team communication. Another one will be on practice planning on how to improve your goalie. Another one will be on kind of going back, what correlates with future success around scouting. So some lessons from scouts that I've been talking with, and that came out of the NHL draft. So now it's, pump it out 3 months. And then this week we'll be talking about why I think Lane Hudson, despite being 5'9", is really pushing through a new era for NHL defensemen. And really, he's just building on top of what's already there, but he just takes it to a new level. So he's an exciting little prospect who's got, I think, a ton of upside and plays defense in a modern style and a survivable way at 5'9" for the NHL level. Who's obviously a unicorn. I feel like the last guy that I can remember that was truly at that level. I mean, you got like Gerard and whatnot, but I'm just thinking like the highest of levels, like a Brian Rafalski type.
Yeah.
Different styles, but same idea. So that's kind of some of the topics that we're going to be covering in the future. I've got some that it doesn't let me post out yet because I'm wanting to time it up with certain times of the year. So I've just got those like, this is going to be for November. This will be for December, just when I think it's pertinent to get in front of people's eyes and things to be thinking about.
When you do your newsletters, what would be your target group? Like, what would be the age level, the bandwidth of the direction of what you're intending your sharing of your knowledge for?
Greg Revak of 3 or 4 years prior. That's who we're writing to. But no, it could be used for a wide range, whether it be from parents, coaches, players, management, etc. Covers all of that. I think most pertinent would just be from a coaching perspective. Obviously that's what we all are. So these topics ring very true, but you can take it for many different levels. But yeah, I'm always writing to myself from 3 or 4 years prior. Yeah, if only you knew. You could have done this better if.
How have you changed over since you began?
I feel like I've definitely gotten better at being shorter, to the point. A lot of these things, it's just been on the exploring journey and following the rabbit holes and curiosities down. So a lot of this is just the learnings that I'm having personally. So it's almost like a trail of, this is a good idea. Some of these things I've either been testing out with or I've been doing for quite some time. I think back to when I first started, We all go through the yelling, telling, and I always laugh. Like as soon as someone gets a whistle for the first time and is going to coach, I'm going to fix these players up, and they're going to just, we're going to win the league championship. We're going to win the nationals, and we all quickly learn that that's, not the case. It's not that easy, and you're dealing with human beings. And for me, it's just a forever ongoing journey of how do we help people better, and help them improve, help them become what they want, help them become the people that need to become. And I always joke that really I'm just trying to create great taxpayers. If they're great taxpayers, they're probably good citizens of the world, doing well by others, being great husbands, fathers, contributing members of society, rather than leeches on the world.
Oh, it's very, very interesting to hear you talking about these things. You're today's generation, and I think the game's going in a good direction. I really didn't know how this would go in terms of different topics and styles, because everybody on here has so much experience, and we're all locked into the way we've done things. And I think just the idea of being open-minded and going down rabbit holes and experimenting and trying different things and realizing, being open-minded, that's the biggest thing with coaches in my mind.
Yeah, the biggest thing with that too, Wally, is I find sometimes you run across coaches that they want to be right rather than finding what is right. That those are the people that I'm attracted to, are the ones that, like, they don't care who gets the credit. They just want to be more right than they were the day prior. They want to be less dumb. They want to have the ability to continuously learning. And that's what I hope my kids get, because, life is continuous learning, and just finding out, like, okay, yeah, I may be wrong. I may be stupid sometimes, or may have done the wrong thing, but I'm getting a little bit better. I'm not repeating the same problem. Everyone says that their team goes a little bit after the coach. So I hope my players become further curious, want to continuously improve, and just, be contributing members to whatever their passion is and wherever they find themselves in life. And I just want to find more people that want to do what is right, finding better answers rather than protecting of the kingdom. Again, I know we've kind of talked about this in the past. Just Jesus can kind of guide some of us, whatever that higher calling is for a lot of us, and just kind of living open-handed and being able to give and bless others and steward well.
What you're doing and how you're doing it, how are you finding the adults you work with, the domain, parents, associations, groups that you're a part of? Are they there for this similar purpose?
I mean, I feel like communication with everyone, all stakeholders, is valuable and important, and something that we need to always be conscious of. Because too often, you can see people get narrow focused, which there's a lot of problems with that. I find, like, I try to put on the Columbus Hockey Coaches Summit, and I'm just understanding that not everyone is as engaged as we are in learning and wanting to get better and sharing and finding community, etc., which is a little disappointing. The same point is, like, what is in our control, our horizons, our timelines, compared to what may be on a higher timeline, what works, and how can we best influence the ones that we can reach, and how can we get more to engage and further our reach in a positive fashion. So sometimes you run into a wall and you try to go through it, and other times it's a matter of, are we just banging our head here and it's wasted time and energy? So for me, I'm just trying to find people that are wanting, willing, and open to it, rather than trying to force anything down someone's throat per se. Others are more open to it, and they'll have their agenda and just try to find, give. Maybe we need to think a little bit larger, bigger picture, and how can we serve others better? Because some are open and some aren't, and that's just the facts of life.
Well said. Well said. Well, I want to thank you for coming on today, Greg. It's really good to have you. Anytime you want to come on, and if you have anything you want to talk about, we can go there. It's just sort of like you're going on a holiday and you don't know how the road you're going to take, and you don't know where you're going to end up, but the scenery is going to be wonderful. So I really enjoyed talking to you, and I want to thank you and everybody that's been on today. Peter, Tom, Hal, who's gone on to his working world, and I think it's really important that this generation of coaches, everything gets passed on. I think the commonality with it all, I call it the good of the game, and that's what you're doing, Greg. You're doing it for the right reason. You want to help society, humanity, young people in particular, to make the world better, and I think that's what we're really all about. The score clock, unfortunately, can create a little bit of an obstruction, but the philosophy of making each other better and always trying to get better and keep on learning, that's what coaches are doing. They're making each other better when they compete. So,
Wally, can I add something here?
sure can.
I don't know if it worked. I sent a link to one of the people on my site. He's from India, and they're training in the Himalayas. So he sent a video, and it's incredible the good technique these guys are doing with the stick handling. Yeah, they're training outside and doing this stuff. So I sent a link in this. Hopefully it got to you. And I sent it. I don't have Greg's email, but I sent it to you and Peter. And then there's another guy. So that's in India. And there's another guy that's promoting hockey at the bottom of the world, the tip of Argentina. And they play outside. He makes his own hockey sticks for the deal, and they have outdoor rink, and he sends some videos sometime. And he just had a fund me thing to raise some money to send them some equipment down there. So the point I'm trying to make is it's a world game. As long as you can make ice either indoor or outdoor, people can play the game. So it's pretty dynamic what happens.
Yeah. Well, the timing is perfect when you're talking about the world with the Olympics going on, because I think, having coached so many different sports, I've always had an affinity for the Olympics and what they were supposed to represent. And, quite frankly, I really initially, many years ago, maybe 6 Olympics ago, resented the fact that professional athletes were getting involved. But I can see them getting into the spirit of the Olympics. And I see so many good things being presented, and it's creating a good image of what the Olympics represent when you look at the rings of the continents and all of them competing, and it's sure a hell of a lot better than fighting war. So anyway, I'm going to have to close off here. I've got things to do today, so thanks everybody for your time. Thank you, Greg, and we'll chat again soon.
See you guys.
Thanks, everyone.